Hi Grace, Chantal, and Lizzie. It is 11:27 in New York. I'm sitting here with Kelsey as she reads her PDF for classes that don't matter. I'm going to try to do this in one take because I don't want to have to edit this because I don't have time. I feel like you'd like a little recap of what's happening in New York right now. It rained today. The San Gennaro Festival is on Thursday. We might pop by the 9/11 Memorial on Friday. I didn't know who I wanted to really respond to, but the two things that really stood out to me were what you, Grace, talked about, the topic of Syria, and what Chantal talked about in terms of tragedy, because turns out like your guys' topics were kind of overlapping with something that I've been covering in my journalism class. Last night I was assigned to read 2 articles. No, more like 3 or 4 articles, and a couple of them were on the photo of the drowned Syrian boy, the Syrian refugee, and the other articles were about 9/11. We were just like analyzing different news outlets and how they cover news differently with like their bias and stuff. And I thought it was kind of interesting how a lot of the people in the class, including me, thought we were well versed on the topic of what's going on in Syria and what's going on in the scope that's kind of outside of where we are, like whether it's New York or the United States or like North America, I don't know. There's like a sense of guilt, and we were talking about that in class, and I thought that really tied in with maybe not exactly what Chantal was talking about tragedy, but sometimes unfortunately it doesn't hit you unless it's really close to home. And that kind of ties in with the photo of the drowned Syrian boy and how a lot of people were outraged by that image being retweeted by some other journalists who actually have done a lot of investigative journalism and hands-on work in the war-torn countries. And they were unfazed by it because, I mean, they see bloodied bodies and they see tons of other kids who have, like, they're like dead bodies literally lined up on the street. And they found it funny and almost ridiculous how people couldn't handle a photo, like, of not, like, just something that they thought it was like low key in terms of like a Syrian refugee being dead, and that the public couldn't really handle it. And I thought it was really interesting because there's one side of it where we kind of shy away from things like that, maybe because we don't want to have to be responsible of acknowledging like that things like that happen, because that would have the connotation that we would need to actively pursue a way in which we can help the situation. And a lot of the times, like, a lot of us don't want to admit that, like, we not really don't care about those issues, but it's harder to really empathize and understand and be a part of fixing the problems when we're not immediately exposed to them. That also brings me to another thing I was looking at, like, just now, like 20 minutes ago on my laptop. It was about, you know, that she was like an American volunteer, like worker or something, and she was, I forget which country she was in, but she was one who was captured by the ISIS people, and she was held hostage, and she was tortured and raped for like months, and she's dead. And they just recently were digging up information from another sex slave that had been under the thumb of that ISIS leader who was like leading all of the beheadings and the torturing and stuff. And there were so many, like, it was like the first trending topic on Facebook, and it kind of made me think about how differently they decided to, like, I don't know, just like the amount of articles and the way they were written. Yes, it was an American, and yes, she wasn't on our soil, and it's almost even more of like an attack to like our country or like our ideals, and like, you know, like the whole American like freedom thing, where it's like a terrorist group outside doing like unspeakable things to one lady is like causing so much uproar. And just like a couple of countries away, you have like refugees being killed like day in and day out, and people who don't really have a big nation or a big voice to really like back up anything or say anything to help them. So I thought it was really interesting how our country kind of puts our stakes down, and what we deem to be media worthy and what deems to be like action worthy, and the lines that are drawn in terms of what matters and what doesn't. And a lot of it's perspective, a lot of it's ignorance, and I think a lot of it is just that people are afraid to really think about these issues. They're afraid to talk about them. They're afraid of being politically incorrect. They're afraid of saying the wrong thing, or they just like don't want to even consider the fact that there are these kind of things that are going on in the world. But I feel like it's really important that we expose ourselves to it and that we talk about it, whether we're right or wrong, or we're confused, or we're clear on the topic. I think it's the most important thing is that people are willing to have some kind of motivation to at least understand, or the motivation to have others know and to have others understand at least the facts, whether or not they want to form an opinion. So I thought that was interesting. That's pretty much all I wanted to say on the topic. I will talk to you next Thursday. Okay, bye.